In the year 2000, 71 cents of every dollar held in global reserves was the US dollar. Today, after 25 years of American military dominance and trillion-dollar stimulus, that number is 56.8%, a 20% drop, and the pace is accelerating. And this is where most people get it completely wrong. They think the dollar is being attacked from outside. It is, but here's what nobody is saying out loud. It's also rotting from within, and the US government knows exactly what's happening. Let me show you the data. When the dollar became the world's reserve currency after World War II, it gave America a superpower that most people never notice: the ability to print money that the rest of the world has to hold. Saudi Arabia sells oil in dollars. China manufactures goods priced in dollars. Every central bank in Indonesia, Nigeria, Brazil holds dollars to pay for international trade. And when countries step out of line, the US uses its control of the global dollar system, specifically SWIFT, the global payments network, to cut them off entirely. Iran in 2012, Russia in 2022. But here's the thing about weaponizing your currency. The moment you do it, every other country asks, could this happen to us? This is the part that should concern you. After Russia was cut off in 2022, countries that had never publicly questioned dollar dominance started building exits. BRICS expanded: Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, adding Egypt, Ethiopia, Iran, and the UAE. This bloc now represents roughly 35% of global GDP and nearly half the world's population. Russia and China? Over 90% of their bilateral trade, $228 billion in 2025, is now settled in yuan or rubles, not dollars. India has signed rupee settlement deals with over 20 countries. Saudi Arabia is in active discussions with China about accepting yuan for oil. And central banks globally bought 863 tons of gold in 2025 alone. Poland bought 102 tons in a single year, 28% of its total reserves. That's not diversification, that's a hedge. Now, to be fair, most serious economists describe this as marginal erosion, not existential collapse. The dollar is still dominant. It's just less dominant than it was, and the trend line is not going up. The US spends nearly $1 trillion a year just on interest payments for debt it already has. Since 2020, the US money supply expanded by roughly 40%. The Fed printed trillions. That money went somewhere, into the price of everything you buy. Which brings us to the twist nobody saw coming. While BRICS builds alternatives, while US debt spirals past $38 trillion, something else is happening in the background. The US is exporting the dollar to the entire world, without the banking system, without SWIFT, without any of the infrastructure that takes 3 days and $50 to move money internationally. It's doing it through stablecoins, and the numbers will genuinely surprise you. As of March 2026, the stablecoin market is worth $250 billion. These digital assets, pegged 1-to-1 to the US dollar, settle $15.2 billion in transactions every single day, comparable to Visa's daily volume. And 92% of all stablecoins are dollar-pegged. MasterCard acquired stablecoin payment startup BVNK for an estimated $500 million in January 2026. Stripe acquired Bridge, another stablecoin infrastructure company, for $1.1 billion in 2024. These aren't bets, these are convictions, and Congress is moving to make this official. The Clarity for Payment Stablecoins Act passed the House in December 2025. This is legislation designed to regulate stablecoins as US dollar instruments, extending dollar reach globally through digital infrastructure. This isn't a crypto story anymore. This is a geopolitical story. A stablecoin is simple, a digital token worth exactly $1. You send it over a blockchain, a public ledger anyone can verify, and it arrives anywhere in the world in seconds for almost nothing. Tether, the biggest one, with $143 billion in circulation, holds actual US Treasury bills in reserve. For every USDT that exists, there's $1 in a bank account or government bond backing it. Tether made $7 billion in profit in 2025, just from interest on those reserves. Now here's where it gets real. According to Chainalysis, India ranks first globally in stablecoin transaction volume. Not the US, not Europe. In Argentina, where inflation ran above 200% in 2025, stablecoin volume grew 300% year over year. People aren't speculating. They're preserving their savings when the government won't let them hold dollars. In Nigeria and Kenya, sending $1,000 home via stablecoin costs about $5. Through Western Union, $65. Every single transfer. That's not marginal improvement, that's life-changing. Globally, stablecoins processed an estimated $50 billion in remittances in 2025, still a fraction of the $800 billion SWIFT system, but growing at 50% year over year. And this is where most people get confused, so stay with me. Stablecoins are the dollar digitized. If the US inflates the dollar, your USDT buys less. If the dollar collapses, USDT collapses. You haven't escaped anything. Bitcoin is different. There will only ever be 21 million Bitcoin, not because of a law, a company policy, or a central bank decision, because of mathematics. Since 2020, US money supply up 40%. New Bitcoin entering circulation was cut in half by its programmed halving cycle. The result? Bitcoin is up roughly 500% since 2020. US CPI inflation over the same period, 25%. Gold, the traditional hedge, up about 80%. Bitcoin, 400% over 5 years. Now, I'm not pretending it has no risk. It dropped from its all-time high of $126,000 to $66,000 where it sits today. That's a 47% drawdown. If you bought near the top, you're hurting. That's real. But zoom out, because this next data point changes the entire conversation. In March 2025, under executive order, the United States created something called the Strategic Bitcoin Reserve. As of early 2026, the US government holds approximately 328,000 Bitcoin, worth about $21.8 billion at current prices. Official policy? Permanent hold, no selling. Let that land. The same government that issues the dollar, that runs the Fed, that has spent 50 years enforcing dollar hegemony globally, has officially designated Bitcoin as a strategic reserve asset. And institutions followed. In January 2024, the SEC approved Bitcoin spot ETFs. BlackRock launched theirs. It became one of the fastest growing ETFs in financial history. As of March 2026, BlackRock's IBIT holds $62.5 billion in Bitcoin. The entire US Bitcoin ETF ecosystem, $87 billion, 6.4% of Bitcoin's total market cap. MicroStrategy, now rebranded as Strategy, holds 762,000 Bitcoin, worth $50.6 billion. JP Morgan and Goldman Sachs, who once publicly dismissed Bitcoin, now provide custody and trading services for Bitcoin ETFs. The institutions didn't come in slowly, they came in all at once. And when institutions come in at scale, they don't leave. If you're in a country with an unstable currency, stablecoins let you hold dollar equivalent value without a US bank account. USDC is currently earning 5% annual yield on Coinbase, higher than most savings accounts globally. Platforms like Aave are offering 8.2% APY on USDC. That's DeFi, and it carries smart contract risk. Only use what you can afford to lose. If you believe the dollar will keep losing purchasing power over 10 years, and today's data makes a reasonable case, Bitcoin's fixed supply makes it a logical hedge. Not a trade, not a get-rich scheme. Dollar cost average. Small, fixed purchases weekly or monthly. Remove the pressure of timing the market. Stablecoin risk. In 2022, Terra US, backed by an algorithm, not real dollars, collapsed in 72 hours. $40 billion evaporated. USDT and USDC are fundamentally different, but counterparty risk is real. If Tether's reserves are misrepresented, USDT could depeg. Bitcoin risk. Bitcoin has dropped 80% plus from its peak in previous cycles. It can fall further. Do not invest money you cannot afford to lose. Regulatory risk. Governments can change the rules. Know your local laws. The dollar isn't collapsing overnight. The IMF data doesn't say that. The economists don't say that. But it is weakening, slowly, structurally, measurably. The US government's response is fascinating. Rather than fixing the underlying debt problem, they're doubling down on dollar dominance by pushing it into the digital economy through stablecoins. That might work, for a while. But Bitcoin exists outside of that system entirely. No government issues it. No central bank controls it. No politician can inflate it. The market has gone from dismissing it as a nerd hobby to treating it as a geopolitical reserve asset in the span of a decade. Whether you see that as an opportunity or a warning, that's for you to decide. But now you have the data to decide it clearly. If this helped you understand something you didn't before, subscribe. We're going to keep going deeper on exactly this kind of analysis. And if you have a counter-argument, drop it in the comments. I read them.